Well, welcome back. Joshua Jampo here again with Alfredo Quiles of ESA, the head of the security office for Galileo and Ignos.
Hello, Josh.
We hope you enjoyed the break. We are ready for the end of the mission. So is Soyuz, or I should say Fregat. We are going to, in this next hour, have the second frigate ignition, and then we're going to have separation of the satellites. But first, a review of the mission in pictures. You recall, 3 hours ago, we lifted off in a blaze of fire from French Guiana. Soyuz is taking off right on time at 8:48:43, exactly, 8 minutes, 48 seconds, 48
minutes.
8 o'clock, 48 minutes after 8 o'clock, 43 seconds.
Correct.
You got it right? And everything went fine.
Yes.
And we're going to see pictures of everything happening. She flew for her first minute. She was lost into the clouds early on. I think everybody here in the hall knows that. And then we picked her up with the camera a little later.
Yeah.
We had booster separation right on time. We had fairing separation.
Yes.
Right on time, as you saw. Second stage with the skirt.
That's the third stage, I think.
Third stage with the skirt, yes. And third stage, separation, leaving the frigate. The frigate first ignition, right on time, burned for 13 minutes. And shut down. After which, for the 3 hours, we were coasting. Now, during the interlude, our invited guests here in Jupiter got to visit the space base, saw up close the pads for Ariane and Soyuz. They also looked at the Galileo station here, and you went with them, didn't you? Now, what did you see?
Yes, I was one of the guides.
Before you tell us what you did, you can see we've had our second frigate ignition. We're now at 23,000 kilometers up. You can see on the lower left.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
That's
what did you
good.
see?
No, this is a very nice station. This was one of the first Galileo stations, and at a certain point it was at our most complete station because it has the three types of stations. It has a sensor station to monitor the signals from the satellites, has ULS station, uplink to uplink the navigation messages to the satellites, and also a TTC, the telecommand and tracking station for controlling the satellites using the control segment. So it was it's a nice visit. It was a very interesting station for us.
So they enjoyed it?
Yes, I hope so.
Did you give the guided tour?
Yes.
And did they ask questions?
Yes, some of them.
What sort of questions did you give?
It's basically the most interesting question for everyone is why the TTC is such a large antenna. It's a 13.5 meter antenna.
That's a big dish.
It's
right?
a big dish.
It's a big white dish. That's
big white dish, exactly. And why the ULS uplink station has a much smaller antenna. It's 3.5 meters. And there is a very interesting explanation for this. Is the TTC actually sends and receives signals from the satellite. And then therefore you need a large dish.
Right.
But the ULS station, it's only uplink. It does not receive any signal. So the antenna follows the satellite path, uplinking messages, and then these messages, you see them on the downlink through L-band. And so it's only one way. And this allows it to be very fast, because also the Galileo was designed for safety of life applications, and then we needed to get messages to any user in the world within 6 seconds. And this meant having a system that would be able to track and follow the satellites very quickly to uplink. And this is actually, that's why the design is for a small antenna, very flexible, full motion.
So it sounds like it was an interesting visit. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you. Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Now, describe the climb, because when we left before the break, the frigate was at 2,000 kilometers up, and now you see we're 23,000, heading towards 24,000. She's approaching the range for satellite separation. That's due in about 9 minutes. Now tell us what's happened in between.
Yes, you can see in the image from the transmission here to the right.
On the top right of the screen.
On the top right, exactly. You see how low we were at the beginning, and then how when the first burn of the Fregat started, we were at 500 kilometers, and now we are in 23,500. So this was a really big climb for this Fregat in ballistic mode. So with no external propulsion, just maintaining the attitude and with the correct trajectory.
If there's no
for the
external propulsion, how does
Yes.
she climb?
Because you give a push at the beginning, the big delta V, which means that it gains velocity, and with this it starts to climb. This is the first law of Newton, the second law of Newton, I think, or the third, that basically any body in movement will keep moving.
Stays in motion.
Stays in
right.
motion until another external force is applied to it,
Right.
which is what we are going to do on the second Fregat ignition, because right now it's having an orbit that is not circular. It will get to the point of injection, but we need to circularize this orbit so that it will actually reach the correct injection orbit for the satellites.
Okay, all that is just ahead. Also ahead is the scheduled cutoff, the extinction of the second frigate burn. You see that happening on the screen, and we'll soon get the DDO's confirmation of that. Frigate is still flying. We're approaching separation of the two satellites due now in about 4 minutes.
Yep. Yes, and then there will be a third ignition for about 2 minutes to pacify or empty the upper stage of this fuel. When the Fregat has separated the satellites, it will have this 7-minute passivation phase. This,
Yeah, they do that with Ariane as well, don't
yes, with actually anything that is put in orbit at the end of its mission life has to be passivized.
So they empty all the fuel.
Yes.
And then the stage goes into what you call the cemetery.
Yes,
orbit.
the graveyard orbit or
Graveyard.
cemetery. Exactly. And this is very important because it's one of the rules for putting things into space. So this takes place at 400 kilometers above the orbital slot of the satellites.
I think the DDO just confirmed we had yes, there we go. We had a little radio interference there, but he just did confirm the extinction of the second burn. Now,
Perfect.
remember the frigate can reignite its engines up to 20 times. Now, my question is to you, what sort of a mission would need 20 burns?
Well, actually, yes, it's designed as an orbiter. So, for example, a mission with very complex parameters, for example, to go to another planet, so interplanetary mission, they tend to have very complex maneuvers because they use gravity-assisted maneuvers to actually reach other planets. Otherwise, it is very expensive for a probe to get out of Earth and into other planets without gravity-assisted maneuvers. And these need start and stop burns. So this is why Fregat is ideally designed for this kind of missions.
Now, are you talking about when, I think they call it flyby,
Exactly.
when you use the planet's orbit to get into a sling effect and you
Exactly.
go off in another
You
direction?
use the planet's gravitatory field
Yeah.
to actually fly by and acquire velocity
Yeah.
and change direction to go into another planet. This is done very commonly since it was a type of mission that was invented, I think in the 70s for the Voyager. I seem to remember. And for example, Rosetta did several flybys. This is standard now
That's
in
right,
interplanetary missions. It takes a long time because you have to do several orbits and flybys, but eventually you get there, and at much lower cost.
Okay, so we are going in 2 minutes to have separation of the Galileo satellites, but then after that we're going to have a bit of a wait for post-separation confirmation.
Correct.
Which may take some time, but we'll get back to that. I want to go into a little more detail about during the ballistics phase. during the long ballistics phase, the upper composite was in what they call also a barbecue mode, right? Now that means that it's turning just like a lamb on a spit.
Correct,
right?
exactly.
Now that there's got to be a reason for that.
Indeed, it's because it allows the composite to be balanced thermically. The thing is that when you are in a space, there is a big difference in temperature when you are on the sun or you are in the shadow, and this can be from plus 100 degrees to minus 100 degrees. So this big delta in temperatures is much better to compensate it by rotating slowly the Fregat plus the dispenser plus the satellites, so that this thermal charge will be equally distributed in the satellites.
So that's why it gets cooked
exactly
thoroughly on all sides.
Like a chicken.
Like a chicken. Okay, well, our chicken is due to separate the chicks in just about 30 seconds.
That's very That's very exciting.
We haven't had a chance to talk about the previous Galileo launches. I'd like to just do that, but just before we do that, I wanted to make one note that tonight's ESA mission comes only 29 days after the last Soyuz. Now that's worth noting, that Flight 14, and that smashes the record of 43 days between launches, Galileo launches.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, which was set in 2014 between flights 8 and 9, Galileo flights 8 and 9 in July and August. Now, scheduled separation, you see on the screen, the two satellites pushed from the mothership. Now, you were mentioning earlier that there's actually a 1 second delay. It's not perfectly simultaneous?
It's not 1 second. It's some milliseconds, I think. It's not completely contemporary, but it's almost instantaneous. For us, for humans, it's at the same time. And one thing is that one of the satellites is pushed along the orbit, and the other is in the contrary to the direction of flight. So this way they are perfectly separated, and then they start drifting lowering into their target orbits.
They're going lower now?
They're going lower now.
So this is our apogee altitude. Would you say our apogee is 23,567 on the lower left?
Yes, yes. Actually, the final orbit is circular, so there is no apogee. The altitude will be always the same. It's simply that we inject in the Fregat graveyard orbit, and then it's better this way to go slowly into their target orbit, which is 23,222 kilometers.
So the target orbit is lower than the
graveyard. Exactly.
So I'm assuming that means they don't use up any fuel getting there, or is that wrong?
Yeah, they will use some fuel.
Galileo, FOCAM5.
They do. They use fuel just as if they were just as if they'd have to fly up higher to get to this slot. It's the same deal.
Yes, because you have to decelerate. And to decelerate, you also have to apply a force. It's this Newton law again.
I got it. We're going soon to another replay, and as I mentioned, we have there are about 6 or 7 observation sites across the base, and we have cameras at most of them. There's another replay coming up for you. You see the arms falling. It's always an interesting moment when the arms come back, then you know you're just half a minute away from launch.
Very dramatic. It's very nice. Here is the pre-ignition.
We can talk about some of the previous flights. We haven't had a chance. Arianespace orbited Galileo IOV. You mentioned that was in-orbit validation.
Exactly.
1 and 2.
This was in 2011.
That was the very first Soyuz flight from here.
From here, exactly. So it was a big achievement.
Yeah. Were you here for that?
No, I wasn't. And then we had the second flight for IOV 3 and 4 1 year later in 2012.
Right.
But it's important to note that before that, Soyuz had already been putting our satellites in orbit with Giove A and Giove B. These were our initial experimental satellites, but they were flown from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan with a subsidiary of Arianespace called the Starsem. This happened in 2005 and 2008.
Now, Giove, There's
Yes.
a reason that ESA chose the name Jove, isn't it?
Yeah, this apart from sounding nice, it's because contains IOV, this in-orbit validation,
Yeah.
and also Giove means Jupiter in Italian, and actually Galileo was the person that discovered the moons of Jupiter, and with that he discovered a way of navigating by knowing what were the position of the moons around Jupiter.
Right.
So it's a predecessor of our navigation.
Don't mention the name of the moons because we're going to come to that in a minute. Jove, in English, Jove, which is another way of saying Jupiter.
Exactly. It comes from Latin. Jovian is
Right.
yeah.
Galileo 5 and 6 were injected not into the perfect orbit, I recall. And I know you want to say a word about that. This was Soyuz Flight 10
Yes.
in August 2 years ago. Now, what happened exactly?
Yeah,
Because things can happen.
exactly. This was a very interesting story. For ESA, it was a success story at the end because we learned a lot. But in fact, the satellites were injected in the ground orbit due to a Fregat malfunction.
That's right.
And at the beginning, the immediate effort was to identify and correct the problem, but also to recover the satellites as soon as possible, because the orbit in which they were injected was very elliptic and at a low altitude, and this was affecting our attitude control systems.
I imagine it affects the whole fleet, right?
Yeah, well, it affect no. The rest of the fleet was not affected. That was not a problem. But the satellites are designed for certain working point of orbit, and the orbit was so low that the attitude control systems were not working correctly. So we had to, and also the satellites were going through the radiation belt, which was very worrying because then they can get damaged.
That's the Van Allen belt, which is between what, Mars and
No. It's a much lower one here in near Earth, but it's an altitude that is dangerous for satellites.
That's right. Yeah. Go ahead.
So we had to push the satellites up, doing a number of maneuvers, and it was a very nice effort from our ESOC colleagues in operations and the mission analysis and ESTEC as well. And after a number of maneuvers, the satellites were lifted, and this was done in 2014, early 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And still, we used quite a lot of the fuel in the spacecraft, but there's still some fuel available today for some maneuvers.
So the status of Galileo 5 and 6 now is?
Well, we did the IoT with them, the in-orbit test built by OHB, so it was very important to know that the OHB satellites were performing well, and they were. The satellites are operational today. Their SAR transponder, for example, works very well. And we are now upgrading our ground segment so that they will be usable operationally by users with a small change in our ground segment.
So all is well, we can say.
Yes, and it was a very nice effort by a lot of people working very hard and with a nice result, in my opinion. It was what is the concept of European Space Agency at its best.
It's an interesting subject because when the satellites are orbiting, we have the world's most precise clock flying in space. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, it's accurate down to 1 second every 3 million years.
1 second every 3 million
this
years.
is the
That's
pass-
pretty accurate.
Yes, yes. It's, actually, it was one of the big achievements of Galileo to develop these technologies called hydrogen maser. There are several types of atomic clocks based on different elements, and the hydrogen maser is the most accurate, but it was very hard.
A maser, like a maser laser?
Yes, exactly. It's based, instead of base of light, laser is light augmented emission. Maser is microwave. The M comes from microwave.
Okay.
But the concept is similar, and the challenge was to build a hydrogen maser that would be robust enough to fly in space.
And small enough to fly in space,
Small,
I imagine.
light, and robust, because the conditions for launch is a very delicate machine, very, very precise, evidently, and the vibrations on launch and the conditions in orbit is very challenging to build something that will survive these conditions.
I mentioned small enough because, unless I'm wrong, the first atomic clocks were like the first computers. They were
the size of a room.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Now you can have them much smaller, of course, but the challenge was to make them flight qualified. And this then also we have a backup clock on board based on rubidium.
A backup
clock on board based on rubidium. This is has a lower accuracy of 3 seconds in 1 million years, but it's still pretty good. And they still provide a good reference time for the Galileo mission.
Okay. One note about Galileo, which is interesting. Galileo weighs a lot less than your average telecom satellite. Yeah, but now the reason I'll ask you, my idea is that telecom satellites are built to carry big maximum capacity, right? Transponders, whatever the market is, TV or internet or something. So they have to be manufactured with a lot of transport, a lot of channels aboard, and a lot of weight.
Yes.
6 tons is
as much as possible.
Yeah, because Ariane 5 can lift up to 10 tons, right? She can lift two big ones. So.
I think exactly. What I've seen, I think the largest telecom satellite I've seen in the records, I think is 6 tons or something for Ariane 5.
I think the trend is, despite all the miniaturization and things, telecom satellites keep getting heavier. Galileo, on the other hand,
it's a different kind of mission.
Yeah, one more specific mission.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly.
Which means you need a lot less payload hardware.
Exactly, less power. I think the biggest driver on these telecom satellites is the power. They add transponders because each transponder in the sky.
Good morning. Today's launch with the Soyuz rocket has delivered in orbit the 9th and the 10th satellites of a series of 22 Galileo FOC satellites manufactured by HB in Germany and embarking a payload provided by SSTL in the UK. 4 more satellites are in a very advanced stage of production and testing, and these will be launched in November on board an Ariane 5 launcher specifically adapted to the Galileo mission. The launch campaign has started at the beginning of April 2016, and the satellites underwent a series of tests and preparation activities. All these activities have proceeded smoothly thanks to the excellent work of HB, SSTL, Arianespace, CNES and ESA teams. Following liftoff, after about 4 hours, the satellite have been deployed by the launcher system, and they now perform a sequence of automatic operations, commanded by their onboard computers. These include the spacecraft attitude stabilization, the deployment of the solar array, and finally the pointing of the spacecraft to the sun, allowing the recharge of the spacecraft batteries. The sequence is being closely followed by the Galileo Lib Control Center at ESA, Germany, through a number of dedicated ground stations. We need now to wait for the result of this initial sequence until the satellite reaches the so-called breathing point. At this point, we will consider the launch and the initial acquisition phase successfully completed. Following the initial startup sequence, the satellite will undergo a number of checks to confirm the good status of all the platform equipments. After approximately 6 days, the satellite will be commanded to slowly move to their assigned in-orbit slots using the satellite propulsion system. After approximately 3 to 4 weeks, the payloads will be then activated, the in-orbit testing will start, and will last for several weeks, aiming at characterizing the performance of the navigation payload and over the search and rescue payload. In the middle of summer 2016, the two satellites will be declared operational and finally included into the nominal operation of the Galileo constellation, moving the program closer to the start of the initial services. Thank you.
Well, after that film on the early orbit phase operations, we're going to go, I think, now to a word from Stefan Israel on the confirmation. I think he's making his way to the podium. We'll continue our very interesting discussion about the Galileo mission. Stefan Israel making his way to the podium now. His will be the next voice you hear.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, so the mission is now completed. All the information we have are totally positive. The operations of the satellites have begun after the nominal separation, and we are just now waiting for a few minutes. It can be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, we will see, to make all the announcements that all the parameters are the one we expect. But it should be a good day for Galileo and for Europe. I come back in a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. We're waiting now. He said, what did he say, a few minutes?
Yes.
We can wait. Now, what exactly are we waiting for? We received the signal.
I think so.
We've had acquisition of the two satellites,
Exactly.
I imagine.
And then 20 minutes after separation, so still not there, but we should have some assessment of the launcher ground stations.
From the ground station.
From the ground stations of the launcher, so from Arianespace.
Back with more, but a film on the European Commission, the partner in the Galileo program.
Galileo, the state-of-the-art European system of orbiting satellites and ground stations that will provide positioning, navigation and timing anywhere on the globe. It is the joint effort of some 5,000 people in various European organizations.
In the late 90s, visionary European politicians understood the strategic importance for Europe to have its own satellite navigation system.
La décision prise aujourd'hui par le Conseil est une décision clé pour aboutir dans l'un des projets technologiques les plus ambitieux, ou pour ne pas dire le projet technologique le plus ambitieux au niveau européen.
Since then, European Union countries have worked together to design and build the system.
It was the European Parliament and the Council that asked the European Commission to manage Galileo's development.
My strategy is also very simple, built on what we have achieved. I will focus work in three areas: deploying the infrastructure, providing services as they come on stream, and establishing Galileo in the market.
Soon, anyone around the globe will be able to use the Galileo signals, free of charge, to find their position with unprecedented accuracy. And thanks to an agreement signed between the European Union and the United States of America, Galileo will work seamlessly with GPS.
When lives are at risk, Galileo will also aid search and rescue operations by accurately locating emergency distress beacons. Galileo will also provide secure navigation tools for European Union governments. This public regulated service can be used, for example, by the Coast Guard or the police.
In building Galileo, European industries have demonstrated their know-how and excellence in satellite navigation technologies. Over the next few years, as Galileo's capabilities grow, that excellence will be there for all to use, and by 2020, Galileo will be fully operational and provide continuous navigation services worldwide.
And to keep Europe ready for the future, work has already started on the next generation Galileo system, which will provide more features and even better accuracy.
There are other ESA missions in the Arianespace order book coming up. EDRSC, that's the European Data Relay Satellite for the European Data Relay System. Astroman OHB, tonight's builders,
Exactly.
are the manufacturers there. Two very exciting missions coming up, Arianespace and ESA. The Bepi Colombo is ESA's first mission to Mercury.
Correct. It will be a big. It has been a big challenge, and it's a very, very impressive mission.
Take about 6 years to get there, I think.
Exactly.
And then there's also the famous James Webb Space Telescope. That's a joint NASA-ESA project. That's, I guess, building from the Hubble
Exactly.
telescope, right?
It's the successor of the Hubble, so it's very, very important mission as well, because the Hubble is already very old, and it is essential for the human race to have a space telescope to keep exploring.
A permanent space telescope.
Exactly.
Yeah. Those last two missions, Mercury and the Webb telescope, set for Ariane 5 launches in about 2 years.
Very good.
Now, I want to make another point before we get to our second film about IGNOS, but I don't think we're going to have time. We're going to have another film on the IGNOS program for aviation. That's coming up now. We'll be back with more. We'll talk about satellite navigation and ancient traditions.
Perfect.
Better accessibility to the smaller and regional airports anywhere, which is of high importance for business aviation.
I don't think we've sold a receiver for the last 7 years that didn't include EGNOS capability.
Having the LPV implemented on our aircraft allows us to deliver the service to the passengers.
There is, in my mind, no doubt about it that EGNOS is really a major safety enabler in aviation.
The skies above Europe are becoming increasingly congested, as are Europe's major airports. This growth in air traffic means smaller airports also need to be safely accessible at all times, which cannot be achieved by relying solely on non-precision approaches. However, precision approaches required a substantial investment in ground-based navigation aids, but not anymore. EGNOS, the European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Service, offers enhanced vertical as well as horizontal precision and integrity, improving safety, accessibility and efficiency for operators, pilots and airports across Europe. EGNOS is a satellite-based augmentation system that improves GNSS positioning using 3 satellites and a network of more than 39 reference stations in 24 countries, providing much greater accuracy than achieved through GPS alone. Here's how it works. Stations on the ground pick up signals from GPS satellites, which are then centrally processed. The accuracy of the original signals is determined, and factors such as ionospheric disturbances are taken into account. These data are incorporated into EGNOS correction signals and sent to its 3 geostationary satellites. The satellites then relay the signals back to users. The result is substantially improved horizontal and vertical positioning accuracy and data integrity. But how can EGNOS make a difference? EGNOS improves safety by providing pilots with accurate vertical guidance, increasing situational awareness, and reducing workload.
Unlike old GPS approaches, which gave you only lateral guidance, the new approaches give you both a vertical as well as lateral guidance.
If you can improve the safety of one of the most critical phases of flight, being the approach, you basically improve overall flight safety.
EGNOS can also act as a backup for ground-based systems and is a key element of the future of air traffic management. EGNOS will be pivotal to provide reliable positioning for ADS-B. This is a new cooperative surveillance technology in which an aircraft determines its location using GNSS and periodically broadcasts it, enabling it to be tracked.
As EGNOS is a key portion of the ADS-B out technology and is going to allow more accurate transponder technology, more accurate air traffic control management, more accurate point-to-point positioning of aeroplanes for traffic avoidance.
EGNOS can be a cost-effective alternative to ILS Cat-1, offering similar performance without the need for costly ground-based infrastructure and maintenance.
The LPV approach allows us to make ILS lookalike approaches with the same minimas, allowing the same service to the passengers, but without the ground-based aids.
With the EGNOS procedure, at a very low cost, we can optimize the operations on the runway.
The lower decision heights enabled by EGNOS can also reduce costly delays, diversions and cancellations.
We started off with the basic LNAV approach, and that minimum was 500 feet. So that's the lowest a pilot could fly before he had to initiate a missed approach. An LPV using EGNOS brings it down to 250 to 300 feet here. When we get LPV 200, that will come down to 200 feet. So the aircraft could be a lot lower before it has to initiate a missed approach.
All that is needed is an onboard EGNOS certified receiver, an adapted procedure for the runway end, and an adapted flight management system. For pilots, flying EGNOS approaches only requires limited training and will in many cases be smoother than using an ILS.
Once you practice it and you perform it, it's quite simple. You feel that flight path is smoother and the maneuvers are smoother than flying an ILS.
With an EGNOS procedure, even small and medium-sized airports and heliports remain accessible, even in poor weather conditions.
Today we're being funneled to hubs and major airports. Tomorrow with EGNOS and with LPVs we will be able to fly to all the airfields and aerodromes and regional airports in Europe.
For this kind of runway or airports who do not have an ILS today, you increase accessibility because of the good performance of EGNOS.
The helicopter receives more precise data, which improves positioning accuracy and reliability. This means we can fly closer to the ground safely.
EGNOS can also reduce the impact of aviation on the environment by facilitating curved approaches and continuous descent paths, and therefore reduce both noise and emissions.
We do continuous descents, so we end up with a lower noise print, we end up with less carbon emissions and a better fuel economy.
For helicopters, EGNOS allows custom approach procedures to be developed from any direction using steeper approaches than those flown by fixed-wing aircraft, thereby avoiding densely populated areas. EGNOS was certified for civil aviation in 2011. Hundreds of EGNOS procedures have been published, and many more are under development at airports across Europe. The majority of navigation systems in today's aircraft and helicopters now integrate EGNOS. Furthermore, EGNOS is still improving. EGNOS V3, which will integrate Galileo, is under development, and EGNOS will be extended across and possibly beyond Europe. EGNOS can provide accessibility, safety and cost savings in a single, proven solution by delivering high precision with a low investment.
All right, we've had confirmation of the separation of the satellites, but we're still waiting for confirmation that they have been separated exactly where they should be. So we're waiting for that. We should have a word in just a moment. While we're waiting, what else can you say happens in order to the satellites once they are separated?
Yeah, this is very important. This is what we are waiting now for. After the separation, they immediately switch on and start an automatic sequence of actions to have satellites configured in a safe status, in particular with the solar arrays deployed. This is very important because the batteries will discharge very quickly. So if the solar arrays cannot deploy and the satellite cannot be pointed towards the sun, the mission is lost. Yeah. Yes. So while doing this, we are also getting telemetry and from our network of TTC, telemetry tracking and command stations. So we will monitor if this automatic sequence is running as expected.
As expected. Okay, so that's what we're waiting for, and we should have an answer momentarily. That's what everybody's waiting for.
Yes.
Now, you also wanted to talk about satellite navigation, I recall.
Yes, and
Yeah?
navigation in general.
Yeah, and actually, what is sat-nav? Am I allowed to say that?
Yes,
sat-nav.
of
Do
course.
you say that in the trade? Is that
Yes.
Okay. It's actually satellite navigation is a high-tech version of an ancient tradition, right?
Of
Because
course.
our ancestors used the sky to navigate. That's exactly what we're doing today in 2016.
Correct.
The Phoenicians, I read, used the stars crossing the Mediterranean.
Exactly.
The Polynesians, I know, they came north and settled in Hawaii, crossing the Pacific using the same thing. And just a few years ago, I was in Honolulu, and there was a project taking sailors from Hawaii back on the same route to Polynesia in the same boats, using the same navigation, retracing the path of their ancestors.
That is very impressive.
So that's, I don't want to say it's new wine or old wine in new bottles, but there is a tradition there.
Of course, we just used better technology. Another example of navigation based on time, which is what we do in Galileo, is the job of the work developed by John Harrison. He was the first one to develop clocks.
We're going to another replay. Go ahead with.
There was a big problem in sailing in the seas. It was impossible to know the longitude. So how far away along the equator, let's say you could know how far south or north you were, the latitude, but not the longitude. And in order to estimate that, you needed a very precise clock that would work in the sea. And John Harrison spent decades developing these clocks that are now in exhibition in the observatory in
Greenwich, right?
In Greenwich, exactly.
Yeah. Outside London.
Outside London. And this was a very impressive achievement. And in fact, now our navigation system is also based on very precise clocks, but in space. So it's a nice continuity.
That's a good word for it. It's a continuity. Well done. Now, I have another question. Each time, like today, that you add satellites to the fleet, what happens? I mean, do you have to readjust the others to the newcomers?
No.
Does the addition enhance the fleet? What happens?
The addition enhances the fleet. At this moment, we are still filling the gaps in the constellation. As I was explaining at the beginning, we have 3 planes, 3 orbital planes. In each of these planes, we have slots for 10 satellites, and we are filling these slots progressively. So for the moment, there is no disruption in the constellation when we add 2 more satellites. After the LEOP phase that will start soon, if all goes well, we will start the in-orbit testing phase, in which the satellites are tested, so to see that both the platform and the payload are performing correctly after the launch. So it's using a special set of stations that we have, especially in Redu. And then after this, these satellites will be inserted, that's we call it satellite insertion, in our navigation solution. So the signals from the satellites will be declared operational, and the signals will be included in our algorithms for orbit prediction and time synchronization. It's the ODTS.
That's my question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and then with this, the satellites will start broadcasting the navigation messages with their orbits, and this is what allows the users to start including them in the position.
Confirmation du succès de la mission Galileo Fogem 5.
That's fantastic.
Good news. We've had the confirmation that the separation has been successfully accomplished. The satellites are right where they should be.
Yes, I have a confirmation also. Perfect.
That's terrific. So you see everybody congratulating each other in the hall.
Very good.
And we'll be having the speeches momentarily. So the big news here from Kourou, Soyuz, and the frigate has done its job, injecting the 2 Galileo satellites, 13 and 14, right where they should be.
Fantastic.
So we have a moment while we're waiting for the speeches to go to our quiz question. I'll see if you can get this. We spoke about Jove earlier. That's Italian for Jupiter. Galileo discovered that planet, Jupiter's planet's 4 largest moons.
Exactly, yes.
The Arianespace Soyuz quiz question number 15 is, what are the names of those moons? Now hold on to it if you know. Again, Galileo Galilei discovered Jupiter's 4 largest moons. What are their names? Do you think you know the answer? If you do, hold on to it. Give you a minute to think. And while you're thinking, give you some information. It might trigger your memory in case you got only 3 of them in your mind. Galileo discovered them when? 1610.
Okay.
With his homemade telescope.
Yes.
And later discovered they could be used as a universal clock to obtain the longitude of a point on the Earth's surface. That's what we're talking about today.
Exactly.
Today, the 4 are known as the Galilean moons.
Uh-huh.
You remember this?
Yes.
He thought they were stars, but observed they never left the vicinity of Jupiter. He wrote in his book, they move around Jupiter like Venus and Mars move around the
So,
sun.
ladies and gentlemen, we can now say that this new Galileo mission has been a full success. Daniele and Alizé have been safely separated on their targeted medium Earth orbits. The satellites have successfully performed the initial steps of their launch. Paul will say more about that. And early orbit phase operations. So, big success today for Galileo, for Europe, for all of us. And I can say that Arianespace is particularly happy to celebrate this 250th launch of Arianespace family from CSG with such an emblematic mission for Europe. I think, first of all, it is very important for us to thank our customers. And we have European Commission and ESA as customers for this mission in their respective role. I want to begin with a special thank for European Commission, for DG GROW, for all the team of the DG GROW. We have Paul Flamand with here today. And I want to thank you and the Commissioner Bienkowska for your trust. European Commission has shown its trust in Arianespace at 2 occasions. You have decided to be the first customer of Soyuz here from CSG in 2011. And after we have had some difficulties in August 2014, you have decided to resume with Soyuz. You have made the right choice. We have done 4 successful launches since August 2014. And you have asked us in February to accelerate and to add 1 Soyuz this year, which was not the nominal plan, and we have done it today. We know that Soyuz has done its job. Soyuz has done 7 launches for Galileo since 2011. And now we are waiting for Ariane 5. Ariane 5 ES will come with 4 more Galileo satellites in 2016, this year, in November, the 17th of November. After, I would like to thank ESA. For Arianespace, ESA is a key partner. We are working day by day together with the launcher direction of ESA. And I want to thank our customer, ESA Navigation, for this mission. We have now Paul Verhoff in this position. We used to work with Didier Fèvre as well, and Didier is not far. I really want to thank ESA Navigation, all the team, for their trust and this new common success. I know that Jan Werner is watching the show, and I want to thank also Jan for his confidence. I want to thank our Russian partner. We have worked together on Soyuz. It is a long story. This story has begun in Baikonur with Starsem. We have done 26 successful launches together, and it has had a new step, a crucial step with Soyuz here in the Guyana Space Center. This is today the 15th launch from Soyuz in the Guyana Space Center. And the Russian team, Roscosmos, and today Roscosmos is represented by Mr. Ivanov, who is the deputy of Mr. Komarov. Roscosmos has shown its very strong commitment in our partnership. Roscosmos and all the Russian team have agreed to add this Soyuz to our manifest. Soyuz, we used it 29 days ago for Copernicus, and it is a record because we have never done such a limited number of days between 2 Soyuz. So a big thank to our Russian partner. For sure, we have other partners for this success. We have all the team and the employees here in CSG, our ground industrialist. We have for sure CNES CSG, which is a day-to-day partner, and we are working together to make a new success, a new record of launches this year. We are targeting 12 launches, and we can say that we are very confident to reach this objective together this year. Last but not least, I want to thank our team, Arianespace team. Our team is very dedicated to Soyuz in Guyana. Our program director of Soyuz is François Barrault. He has done a lot for this success. We have a new chief engineer. It's Roland Lagier, and it was successful. So I really want to thank all our team working on Soyuz inside Arianespace. I should also mention OHB. OHB is our key partner for Galileo. So we have now done this 5 mission together, full operational capability mission for Galileo. And it is, OHB is also a shareholder of Arianespace. It is an important shareholder of Arianespace. And I really want to thank the team of OHB, Marco Fuchs, and all OHB team for this joint success. So I now leave the floor to our customers. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good almost afternoon. No, it is still morning here. It is afternoon in Central Europe. This was great, wasn't it? We had a success. It's always good to stay up at night and see that there is success afterwards. Just to tell you a few things about what we have done since the separation. There was a need to acquisition the satellites to switch them on. The solar panels have been deployed on both of them, and the satellites have been put in sun pointing mode and in a stable condition. So we now have a first determination of the orbits and their deployment status, and everything seems in order. We will get a second assessment in about an hour, which will confirm that everything is going fine. The combined ESA-CNES team in Darmstadt is handling the satellites at the moment, and they will take them through their early operations and then take them to their respective orbital positions on plane A. So this launch marks a turning point in the Galileo program, to be honest, because we now move from mostly a deployment focus to an operations and service focus. And we now have, with these satellites, once they are tested, we have sufficient satellites in orbit in order to provide initial services. So the satellites will be put to their position, as I said. They will be tested. They will be handed over to the operator. A number of further ground segment deployments will be undertaken. And later in the year, after we have completed an initial services validation campaign, it is intended that the European Commission will declare the services. In parallel, ESA will continue to assist the GSA and the Commission with operations, with service provision. That is an important task which will now start. And in parallel, we will continue deploying further elements of the system, in particular the satellites. And as Stefan has said, the 17th of November, we will launch with a specially adapted Ariane 5 from here. So I would like to thank all the teams for fantastic work over the last months. This has been one of the shortest campaigns ever put together. It has resulted in a very successful launch, as we've seen. Stefan and his team from Arianespace, the Russian partners, our friends from CNES, the teams from OHB and SSTL, and their teams around them, the local authorities here in Guyana, as well as the teams from the public partnership, if you allow me, the European Commission, GSA, and ESA, and in ESA, the tech teams, the ops teams, and the NAV teams. So Galileo is a success story with many fathers, and hopefully some others. I just want to close off by mentioning two of us, two of them here today, two real fathers. One is Hans Fromm. Hans was the very first manager in ESA who undertook the initial studies for a satellite navigation system to be done in Europe. This system we now call Galileo. Next to him is Alex Desiv. He was one of the senior partners of Hans and did a lot of the work in Brussels at the time. If it wasn't for Hans and Alex, we would not be here today. So on behalf of all of us, I'm glad you're here. and want to thank you for your pioneering work, which started almost 20 years ago. So it remains me to wish success to our colleagues of ISAC and CNES for the next weeks, and we're looking forward to the satellite to be ready in about 3 months for operations. Thank you.
Bonjour. Alors aujourd'hui, c'est la démonstration du succès de l'industrie européenne et je tiens particulièrement à remercier Arianespace, le CNES, l'Agence spatiale européenne, les industriels européens pour leur flexibilité parce qu'effectivement, en tant que client, il y a quelques mois, nous avons demandé s'il était possible d'accélérer le calendrier et aujourd'hui, nous avons lancé 2 satellites en plus de la constellation Galileo alors que ces 2 satellites
of the Galileo constellation, whereas we had first planned to launch those 2 satellites in 2017 only. So we have speeded up things, and it's a great success. We can realize today that putting in common our ideas, energy, intelligence in all European countries, well, putting this together will give us the means of our ambition, and an ambitious project such as Galileo is a success when all European countries contribute to its success. I have the feeling that today's satellites are like bricks. We are building up a lighthouse which soon, at the end of this year, will start lightening the horizon, and it will help us, it will help guide all of us. We are all travelers after all, aren't we? Between now and the end of the year, we should have started the initial services of Galileo. This is very important because today, all over the world, you have 5 to 6 billion equipments using satellite navigation. In 2020, this number should be close to 10 billion. 10 billion appliances will use this navigation system. It's a 2-digit growth rate, and Europe has to take part of the adventure, and it's a great opportunity for European industries. I would also like to announce that last week the International Maritime Organization recognized, accepted Galileo as one of the components of the global radio navigation system. It's another success. It shows that our system is very interesting, and other international partners are very interested. For example, our colleagues and partners from the US, they've shown a great interest in our system, and quite soon we will start talking with them to transform this approach into a real cooperation. Today's success will enable us to really develop Galileo and EGNOS navigation systems. They will become part and parcel of the European space strategy, and this strategy will be put on the table before now and the end of the year by the Commission. Today's success guarantees that we can now move forward. In the future, we will be able to get the funding that will enable us to go on with this great adventure, this great Galileo adventure. So once again, let me thank Arianespace, the industry, and of course the private sector, but I would also like to thank the public sector, European Parliament, Council, all those member states, all those who support this project, including our colleagues in Europe, our friends in Europe. Everybody is participating to the implementation and development of this great Galileo system. We have an appointment now. We'll meet again in November. We'll come back here, and I hope that the success will be even double, because with Ariane 5 we'll have 4 satellites into orbit in November, and this will enable us to actually start the initial service phase of Galileo. Thanks again for this great success.
Also, good morning from my side. I have to tell you first, even if I look back to 16 years in space, it's the first launch I can experience lively, and it's really moving. And if I knew not better that there is a huge effort behind all of that, this calm atmosphere of precision, quality and concentration here could lead you to the assumption that this is all easygoing. I do know it's the opposite, and therefore I want to give back all the thanks I have received to Arianespace, to the European Commission, ESA, CNES. Thank you for your trust in us. I hope we could prove that we really deserve it. And it may well lie in the genes of our company, being a family company, that we look at our products such as parents look to children. And actually you have two times in a life cycle with the children, a phase where you are extremely proud. Right after birth, and then once the children manage to position themselves in the right, and in our case in the right orbit, and this was proven. It was proven for 14 of our children. The last ones have been Alice and Daniele, and I think we can all be very proud of it. And as I do know that there are some colleagues at Bremen and Oberpfaffenhofen watching us here, I want to say moin and servus to Oberpfaffenhofen. You have done an excellent job. Ihr könnt wirklich stolz sein. Super gemacht. And I have to confess now, Pat, that we took a selfie this morning, 3 hours ago, with the digits up. It was perhaps a bit dangerous, but I think you can send it out now. And special thanks to our friends in Guildford at SSTL. Perfect partnership, and we are happy to continue that. Thank you.
Mesdames, Messieurs, je crois que les dieux
Ladies and
de la météo
gentlemen, the
étaient avec nous ce
gods
soir
of
et
weather
nous avons pu
were
ce
with
soir,
us
ce matin.
this morning. I keep saying
nuit longue,
tonight, but
c'est
it was
encore
a
la
long
soirée.
night, so I still feel that.
Et nous avons eu un magnifique lancement,
Anyway,
ce 7e lancement de Galileo.
it was a beautiful
centre
launch,
spatial
this
guyanais par
seventh
Soyuz.
Galileo launch by
Ce
a
lancement
Soyuz
réussi
launcher.
montre que
This
la
successful
coopération
launch
européenne
shows
est
that
établie sur des bases
European
solides,
cooperation, when it's
comme
based on a solid
programme
foundation,
Galileo,
works.
mais aussi le
The
programme
Galileo
Soyuz en
program
Guyane est
is
une
strong,
mécanique
is
bien
solid, and the Galileo program
Et ce lancement
in
démontre
Guyana
encore une
is
fois que les
doing
choix de la
fine.
politique spatiale
And
européenne
this
sont
launch
des plus
shows
ambitieux
that
pour
the
mener au
choices
succès.
made by
Et donc,
Europe
au nom du
are
CNES,
great, are
je
good,
félicite
and
tous
are
les acteurs
taking
de
us
ce
to
succès,
success on
la
behalf
Commission
of
européenne,
us all. I would
l'ESA,
like to thank ESA,
Arianespace et
the European
Starsem,
Commission,
et
Arianespace
l'industrie,
and
en
Starsem,
Europe,
and obviously
et bien sûr,
European
les équipes du
industry
CNES.
and the
Et
CNES
je
teams.
souhaite effectivement une
And
longue vie
I
à
wish
Daniele
long
et
live
Alizé. Nous sommes sous les
to
Alizés ici,
Daniele and
Alizé.
Alizé.
Et donc,
We are in the
de les
Alizé
voir très
region
vite en
here, as you
action,
know, so I hope that we can see them become really alive very briefly, very quickly, very quickly. And
Mais cette réussite,
this success, well, we owe this success to our cooperation with Russia. I would like to congratulate Roscosmos and Russian industry for this successful launch. I would like to thank them for their excellence, which is at the origin of this great success. Soyuz is a major launcher. This year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Franco-Russian cooperation, and the second successful launch of Soyuz here in Guyana is a great way of celebrating this event. We have been able to develop major partnerships between our countries in science, but also in access to space. Soyuz in Guyana is a great proof of the connection that exists between us. 50 years, I mean, this is a long-lasting cooperation in all sorts of different fields. In tonight's launch, VS15, well, this launch didn't exist even at the beginning of the year. It was decided 4 months ago, actually, to meet the needs of the European Commission that wanted to speed up the deployment of Galileo in order to provide the services of the system as quickly as possible. And I must say that the CSG teams, everybody here in the industries, Arianespace, CNES, they've really made this launch possible this additional launch possible while going on with their ongoing programs. And it's a great source of satisfaction, I'm sure, for Stéphane Israël and for the CNES as well. We really wanted to have this launch program, we wanted it to be at the same level as it was in 2015. So excellence, again, has been a key word for CSG. And the CSG teams do deserve our congratulations. CSG has proven that its organization based on simple things, direct relationship between stakeholders is a great, it's a working model. It should be a source of inspiration for us all, especially with Ariane 6 and Vega C. The future in CSG is great, with a great program, the Ariane 6 program, which is being developed as well. We're waiting. The first phase is now over, and we have to decide the future contractor will build the infrastructure. But the infrastructure should be decided this year anyway, so we'll have a new launch pad and updating program, refurbishing programs also are being developed at the moment. And with these future perspectives, CSG is here at the service of Europe. We are here at the service of the region of Guyana. And we're very proud of having with us young people trained on technical jobs. 12 of them have been trained by CSG this year, and I hope that in the future programs will be able to have more of them. It proves that we are very committed to this Guyana region, to its development, and we'll make sure that other stakeholders take a full part in the activities of the base, of the space port. We'll do all that we can to develop local partnerships. So there are great perspectives here in French Guyana. I would like to thank ESA and the European Commission for the trust in the CSG. They're at home here. They come back when they want. And I'd like to thank you as well for your patience, and we will meet again quite soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Donc, quelques mots de conclusion en français.
A few words of conclusion in French, if you allow me.
De rendezvous.
Two appointments. Will be back here on the 17th of November with 4 Galileo satellites with the Ariane 5 launcher. It will be a very important moment that we are preparing with our OHB, ESA, European Commission, ASM for the qualification of the launcher. We're preparing this moment for months. We've been preparing this moment for months, and we are quite confident that we will be on time. And after launching 6 new Galileo satellites, 1 Copernicus satellite, I hope that the European Commission will get on board this program of European satellites. It's a great challenge for our common future. But before that, we'll meet again on the 8th of June, in a few days. We will be back here with an Ariane 5 launcher, this time for 2 customers, EcoStar 18 for the Dish Network LLC satellite telecom operator, and Brisat. It's a new customer. It's an Indonesian bank that is going to launch a satellite. So we'll prepare this great launch once again with Ariane 5. And in the meantime, have a great day. Thank you.
So congratulations to everybody. Did you get the quiz question, the name of Jupiter's 4 largest moons, quickly?
Only 2. I can only remember 2, Io and Callisto.
Io and Callisto. You missed Europa and Ganymede.
Europa, of course.
But if you gave yourself, you guessed correctly, give yourselves a round of applause. Congratulations to everybody for the launch. Any last words?
Yes, thank you, Josh. It was a pleasure to be here, and I would like to say goodbye just by sending my warmest regards to the teams, the LEOP teams in ISOC. From CNES and ESA, and also mention to the GSMC team in Saint-Germain-en-Laye, which is connecting the GSMC to the GCC in Fucino for the first time today. It was very nice.
Okay, so over the shots of the replay, we'll say goodbye. Any last words?
Yes, thank you, Josh. It was a pleasure to be here.
Okay.
Yes.
Next flight in June with Ariane 5 will be here, and hope you will be too. Till then, Joshua Jampa with Alfredo Quiles on behalf of everybody here in the Space Center. Thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed it. We did. We look forward to being with you next time. Goodbye, everybody.